The great lecture hall of the Galactic Union Academy floated in the darkness of space. It was built on a station called a massive metal ring that circled a dying star. Students from 100 different worlds came here to learn about the universe. They came to study history, science, and the great mysteries of existence. Sat in row 47, near the back of the amphitheater. She was small compared to most of the beings around her. Her black hair was tied in a simple ponytail, and she wore the standard gray uniform of exchange students. She was 24 years old and had traveled very far from home. Home was a place called Earth. The amphitheater was enormous. It could hold 10,000 students at once. The seats curved upward like the inside of a bowl, and at the center stood a floating platform where professors gave their lectures. Today, the hall was only half full, but that still meant thousands of alien eyes looking down at the stage. Looked around at her classmates. To her left sat a being made entirely of blue light. It pulsed gently as it took notes. To her right was a creature that looked like a floating jellyfish, its transparent body filled with tiny glowing organs. In front of her, a rock-like being sat perfectly still, its stone face showing no expression. None of them looked at, none of them talked to her. She was new here, and she was strange to them. Earth had only been discovered by the Galactic Union 3 years ago. Humans were still unknown to most of the galaxy. The lights in the hall dimmed, and the lecture began. Professor rose from beneath the platform on a column of light. He was from a water world called. His body was long and thin, covered in smooth blue scales. He had 4 arms and 3 eyes that blinked one at a time. When he spoke, his voice was gentle and calm, like water flowing over stones. "Good morning, students," said. "Today we will discuss one of the most important topics in galactic history. We will talk about extinction." A holographic display appeared behind him. It showed images of strange planets covered in fire, ice, and storms. These were worlds that looked angry, violent, and dangerous. "The universe is full of worlds," continued. "Most of them are kind. They have gentle climates, stable ground, and peaceful skies. Life grows easily on such worlds. This is where all civilized species come from." He waved one of his 4 arms, and the display changed. Now it showed a classification chart. "We rate worlds by their danger level. Category 1 is the safest. Category 10 is the most dangerous. Anything above Category 7 is called a..." Leaned forward slightly. She had never heard this term before. "Are planets where survival is nearly impossible," explained. "They have extreme gravity that crushes bones. They have atmospheres filled with poison. They have weather that destroys everything in its path. They have creatures that hunt and kill without mercy." The holographic display showed images of terrifying beasts. Some had teeth as long as swords. Others had claws that could cut through metal. The students in the hall made sounds of fear and disgust. "Long ago, intelligent life did evolve on some of these," said. His voice became sad. "These species were strong. They were fierce. They learned to fight against their own planets just to survive one more day." He paused and looked out at his students. "But they all died." The words hung in the air like a cold wind. "The species went extinct," continued. "Every single one of them. Their planets were too harsh. Their lives were too short. They could never develop the technology needed for space travel. The universe is cruel, students. It does not allow the children of violent worlds to reach the stars." The rock-like being in front of nodded slowly. The jellyfish creature beside her bobbed up and down in agreement. Everyone in the hall accepted this as truth. It was written in their textbooks. It was taught in their schools. It was known throughout the entire galaxy. Species were extinct, all of them. Felt something strange in her chest. It was a feeling she could not quite name. Confusion, perhaps, or maybe something closer to anger. Professor changed the display again. Now it showed a beautiful image of a peaceful planet with 2 suns and purple oceans. "This is why the Galactic Union exists," he said. "We are species from gentle worlds. We came together to share knowledge and protect each other. We are the lucky ones. We were born on planets that wanted us to live." He smiled, showing rows of small, flat teeth. "It is sad that no species survived. We would have learned much from them. Their strength, their will to live, their ability to endure pain. These things are valuable, but biology and physics are unforgiving. The universe does not care about what we want. It only cares about what is possible." His hand twitched. She wanted to raise it. She wanted to say something, but she was afraid. She was new here. She did not want to cause trouble. Continued his lecture. He talked about the history of the Galactic Union. He talked about how different species had learned to live together in peace. He talked about the great achievements of civilization. But was not listening anymore. Her mind was stuck on one thing. Category 7 and above: extreme gravity, poison atmosphere, violent weather, killer creatures. She thought about Earth. She thought about the oceans that covered most of her planet. She thought about the earthquakes and volcanoes. She thought about hurricanes and tornadoes. She thought about lions and sharks and crocodiles. She thought about the bacteria that lived inside every human body, fighting endless tiny wars. She thought about the oxygen in Earth's atmosphere. Oxygen was reactive. Oxygen made things burn. Oxygen was literally fire waiting to happen. What category was Earth? Pulled out her personal and began searching quietly. The Galactic Union had databases on every known world. Earth had been added recently after first contact. The information should be there. She found the entry and opened it. Her blood went cold. Earth, third planet from a yellow star called Sol. Oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere. Active tectonic plates. Extreme temperature variance. Electromagnetic storms. Large natural satellite causing tidal effects. Native life includes millions of predator species and billions of disease organisms. And at the bottom of the entry, in bright red letters: category rating 12. Classification extreme. Status inhabited, population 11 billion. Stared at the screen, her hands were shaking. Category 12. That was higher than anything Professor had mentioned. The scale only went to 10 in his lecture. Earth was off the chart. And 11 billion humans lived there. She looked up at the professor, who was still talking about the gentle worlds of the Galactic Union. He had no idea. None of them did. They thought species were extinct because they had never met one. Until now. Every human was. Her entire species had evolved on one of the most dangerous planets in the known universe, and they had not just survived. They had built cities. They had created art. They had invented technology. They had reached for the stars. The feeling in her chest grew stronger. It was not anger anymore. It was something else. It was pride. Put her away and looked at the stage. Professor was wrapping up his lecture on extinction. "Remember, students," he said, "the universe has rules. Some species are meant to survive. Others are not. That is simply how things are." Smiled softly. Tomorrow she would attend the next lecture. Tomorrow, when said those words again, she would raise her hand. Tomorrow, everything would change. The next day came faster than expected. She had not slept well. Her mind kept returning to that number. Category 12. 2 points higher than the most dangerous worlds the professor had mentioned, and somehow her people had built a civilization there. She walked into the lecture hall early. The great amphitheater was nearly empty, with only a few students scattered across the curved rows of seats. Chose a seat closer to the front this time. Row 23. Close enough to be seen, close enough to be heard. Her heart was beating faster than normal. She could feel it pounding against her ribs. This was not like her, was usually quiet. She preferred to watch and listen rather than speak. But something inside her had changed since yesterday. Students began filling the hall. the blue light being floated past her, pulsing softly. The rock creature took its usual seat. The jellyfish bobbed into position near the ceiling, where it could see everything below. Professor rose to the platform exactly on time. His 3 eyes scanned the crowd, and he smiled his gentle smile. "Good morning, students," he said. "Today we continue our discussion on the ecology of inhabited worlds. Specifically, we will examine why intelligent life can only develop on certain types of planets." The holographic display activated behind him. It showed a graph with world categories on one axis and probability of intelligent life on the other. The line went up sharply for categories 1 through 3, then dropped to nearly 0 after category 5. "The data is clear," said. "Intelligent life requires stability. It requires time to evolve. It requires generations of peace to develop language, culture, and technology. These things cannot happen on violent worlds." His hands gripped the edge of her seat. "Consider the challenges," the professor continued. "On a Category 6 world, the average of native organisms is less than 10 cycles. They spend all their energy on survival. They have no time for thought, no time for growth, no time for dreams." He changed the display to show images of barren, hostile planets. "On Category 7 and above, we call these places. The name is not poetry. It is fact. These worlds kill everything that lives on them. The few species that evolved intelligence on such planets were remarkable, yes, but they were also doomed." Paused, his voice becoming soft and sad. "Every species in recorded history went extinct before achieving interstellar travel. This is not opinion. This is not theory. This is scientific fact, confirmed by thousands of studies across millions of years of galactic observation." A student in the front row raised a tentacle, pointed to them. "Professor," the student asked, "is it possible that any species could have survived, perhaps on a world we have not yet discovered?" Shook his head slowly. "The probability is essentially 0. We have mapped 98% of the galaxy. If a species had developed space travel, we would have found evidence. Ships, signals, colonies, something, but there is nothing. They are all gone." He smiled sadly. "It is a tragedy, but also a lesson. The universe has rules. Life must work within those rules, or it does not survive. Species pushed against those rules, and the rules pushed back harder." The hall was silent. Students nodded in understanding. Some took notes. Others simply absorbed the information without question. It was truth, after all. Everyone knew it was truth. Raised her hand. The motion was small at first, almost hesitant. But then she straightened her arm fully, lifting it high above her head. In the vast amphitheater among thousands of alien bodies, the gesture stood out. Professor noticed. His 3 eyes blinked one after another as he looked at the small figure in row 23. "Yes, student," he said, "you have a question." Lowered her arm and stood up. Her legs felt weak, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "I'm sorry to interrupt, Professor, but I'm confused about something." Tilted his head, an expression of curiosity crossing his scaled face. "Please ask. Questions are how we learn." Took a breath. Around her, thousands of alien eyes turned to look. Some were curious, some were annoyed. A few seemed bored. None of them knew what was coming. "You said all species went extinct," said. "You said this is confirmed scientific fact." "That is correct." "And you said the probability of any surviving is essentially 0. "Also correct." Nodded slowly. "Then can you explain something to me?" "Of course." "What category is my?" The question hung in the air, seemed confused by it. Other students shifted in their seats, unsure why this mattered. "Yours said, let me check." He pulled up his and began searching. "You are from the new contact world, correct? The one called?" Earth said. "Yes, Earth," found the entry and opened it. His eyes moved across the screen. Then they stopped. His blue scales went pale, turning almost white. His forearms went stiff at his sides. "Professor," said, "what category is Earth?" Did not answer immediately. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The students in the hall began to murmur, sensing that something was wrong. Finally found his voice. It was barely a whisper. Category 12. The holographic display behind him flickered. It had been set to show whatever data the professor accessed. Now it displayed Earth's planetary profile for all to see. Category rating 12. Classification extreme. The hall exploded into chaos. Students screamed. Some fled toward the exits. Others pressed themselves against their seats, as if trying to get as far from as possible. The jellyfish creature released a cloud of defensive ink that filled the air around it, the rock being cracked down the middle in what appeared to be pure shock. "That's impossible," someone shouted. "The data must be wrong." A Category 12. Nothing survives Category 12. Remained standing, calm in the middle of the storm. She looked at Professor, who was staring at her like she was a ghost. "Professor," she said, her voice cutting through the noise, "I'm literally right here." Could not speak. His mouth kept moving, but no words came out. Continued. 11 billion of my people live on Earth. We have cities, universities, hospitals, and space programs. We've been there for 300,000 years. We're not extinct, Professor. We're just late to the party." The chaos in the hall slowly died down as her words sank in. Students stopped running. The screaming faded. Everyone turned to look at the small human woman standing in row 23. "How?" finally managed to ask. "How is this possible?" Shrugged. It was such a simple human gesture. "We survived." "But the gravity alone." Looked at the data again. "Your world has nearly 2.5 times standard gravity. Your bones should be crushed." "Our bones are dense. We adapted." "The atmosphere contains 21% oxygen. That's a highly reactive oxidizer. One spark and—" "We learned to control fire," said. "About 1 million years ago. We use it to cook food, build tools, and stay warm." "Your world has active plate tectonics. The ground literally breaks apart." "We call them earthquakes. They're scary, but we build structures that can survive them." Scrolled through more data, his horror growing with each line. "You have polar ice caps and equatorial deserts. Temperature ranges from -80 to +50 degrees. You have hurricanes, tornadoes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions. You have millions of predator species and billions of disease organisms." "Yes," said simply. "And your people survived all of this." "Not just survived. We became the dominant species on the planet. Every environment you just mentioned, we live there. Ice caps, deserts, mountains, oceans. We're everywhere." The hall was completely silent now. Every student, every being from every gentle world in the galaxy, stared at the small human with new eyes. Smiled. It was meant to be friendly, but several students flinched at the sight of her teeth. "Your textbook said species went extinct," she said. "I think you need to update them." Professor slowly sat down on the platform, his legs no longer able to support him. His fell from his hands and clattered against the floor. "The Galactic Council," he whispered. "They need to know about this." "I'm sure they will," said. "But right now I have a question for you, Professor." Looked up at her with eyes full of fear and wonder. "If we survived a Category 12 world," said, "what else do you think we can survive?" She sat back down in her seat, the question hanging in the air like thunder before a storm. No one had an answer. The news spread across the galaxy in less than a standard day. Communication networks carried the story from station to station, from planet to planet, from the core worlds to the outer rim. A living species, Category 12, impossible, and yet undeniably real. The Galactic Council held an emergency meeting within hours. Representatives from over 300 worlds gathered in the Great Chamber on the station called Unity. They argued, they shouted, they demanded explanations. Some refused to believe the data, others demanded immediate action, but in the end they all agreed on one thing. They needed to see Earth for themselves. A scientific delegation was assembled. The best minds from across the Union volunteered for the mission. Among them were two beings who would change history. The first was from the crystalline world of. His body was made of living glass, shaped roughly like a humanoid but with jagged edges and glowing veins of light running through his form. Had spent his entire life studying alien life forms. He had seen things that would drive most beings mad, but nothing had prepared him for what he was about to witness. The second was a historian from a gas giant called, had no solid body. She existed as a cloud of consciousness held together by magnetic fields. Her people communicated through changes in electrical patterns, which translator devices converted to speech. Had dedicated her existence to studying the mythology of. She had always believed the stories were exaggerated. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The delegation traveled for 3 weeks through hyperspace corridors. When they finally emerged near the Sol system, their first view of Earth was through the main observation deck. Nearly shattered. That's water," he whispered, pressing his crystal hands against the transparent wall. Exposed water, covering the entire surface. The blue planet hung in the darkness of space, beautiful and terrifying. Clouds swirled across its surface. Continents of brown and green pushed up through endless oceans. A single large moon orbited nearby, its gravitational pull creating tides that moved billions of tons of water every day. 70% coverage, said, her form flickering with disbelief. Liquid monoxide open to the atmosphere. No containment systems, no protective barriers, just there. On there, water was precious. It was stored in sealed containers, carefully measured, never wasted. The idea of an entire planet covered in the stuff, exposed and unprotected, was almost impossible to process. The delegation ship descended through Earth's atmosphere. As they broke through the clouds, the true nature of the planet became clear. Mountains rose from the ground like broken teeth. Rivers carved through valleys with violent force. Forests covered entire regions, billions of plants growing in wild chaos, and everywhere life moved. Birds filled the sky. Fish filled the water. Creatures of every shape and size crawled, walked, ran, and flew across every surface. "The biomass readings are off the scale," one of the scientists reported, her voice shaking. "There are millions of distinct species, maybe billions, and they're all competing, all fighting, all trying to survive." Watched as a bird dove into the ocean and emerged with a struggling fish in its beak. "They eat each other." "Yes," said a voice from behind them. "We call it the food chain." The delegation turned to find a human male standing at the entrance to the observation deck. He was average height by human standards, which meant he was taller than most beings in the room. He had short black hair, warm brown eyes, and a smile that showed his teeth. Several members of the delegation stepped back in fear. "I'm," the human said, bowing slightly. "I've been assigned as your liaison while you're on Earth. Welcome to our home." No one spoke. They simply stared at him like he was a monster wearing friendly skin. Seemed used to this reaction. "I know this is a lot to take in. Maybe we should start with something simple. Are you hungry?" The delegation exchanged uncertain looks. "We have food prepared," continued. "Don't worry, it's been adjusted for your biology. Nothing dangerous." The word dangerous made its form flicker nervously. Led them through the landing facility to a conference room where meals had been laid out. The food for the alien delegates was simple, nutrient pastes in various colors, carefully synthesized to match their dietary needs. But on a separate table sat food meant for humans. Examined the human dishes with growing horror. "What is this red substance?" Kimchi said, "It's fermented vegetables." "Fermented, you mean?" rotted by microorganisms. Controlled fermentation. The bacteria are helpful. They make the food last longer and add flavor. His crystal body made a crackling sound, which was his species' equivalent of a gag. Drifted closer to another dish. And this, it's emitting heat. That's soup. We cook most of our food. It kills harmful bacteria and makes nutrients easier to absorb. You apply heat to dead organisms before consuming them. Yes, that seems excessive. Shrugged, it tastes better. The meal continued in awkward silence. The delegation members ate their nutrient paste while watching consume his food with obvious enjoyment. He used metal tools to pick up hot substances and put them directly into his mouth. He chewed with his teeth, the same teeth that had frightened students at the academy. And when he was finished, he drank a dark liquid that he called coffee. This contains a stimulant compound, one scientist noted, scanning the drink. It accelerates cardiac function and neural activity. Caffeine, confirmed. Humans love it. Most of us drink it every day. You voluntarily consume a cardiac stimulant every day. Some of us drink 3 or 4 cups. The scientist's tentacles went limp. After the meal, took the delegation on a tour of the local area. They had landed near a city called Seoul, one of Earth's largest population centers. The plan was to show them human civilization up close. It was a mistake. The streets were chaos. Millions of humans moved in every direction at once. They walked, ran, rode vehicles, and talked on communication devices all at the same time. Buildings rose hundreds of meters into the sky, defying gravity with nothing but metal and glass. Underground trains screamed through tunnels, carrying passengers at incredible speeds. How do they not collide? Asked, watching a busy intersection where humans and vehicles crossed paths in seemingly random patterns. They follow rules, said. Traffic lights, crosswalk signals, everyone knows the system. But one mistake and people die sometimes. It's rare, but it happens. And you accept this. We try to make it safer, but life involves risk. We can't eliminate all danger. We can only manage it. Form flickered rapidly as she processed this information. Your entire society is built on acceptable levels of mortality. Thought about it? I guess so. We wear safety equipment, follow guidelines, look both ways before crossing the street. But we also know that accidents happen. We move forward anyway. The delegation continued through the city. They visited a hospital where humans repaired damaged bodies with surgery and chemicals. They visited a fire station where humans trained to run into burning buildings to save others. They visited a school where young humans learned about their violent history, wars, plagues, disasters, and the slow climb toward civilization. At every stop, the aliens found new reasons to be terrified. Your immune system fights billions of pathogens every day, a doctor explained cheerfully. Most of you carry thousands of bacteria species in your digestive tract alone. Your body is a constant battlefield. Your planet experiences approximately 500,000 earthquakes per year, a geologist said. Most are too small to feel, but the big ones can level cities. Humans have survived ice ages, volcanic winters, and at least 5 mass extinction events, a historian noted. We're still here because we adapt faster than anything else on this planet. By the end of the first day, the delegation was exhausted, not physically. Their bodies were fine, but mentally and emotionally they were destroyed. Sat in his quarters, staring at the wall. His crystal form had developed hairline fractures from the stress. Drifted in a corner, her form barely holding together. We were taught that species were victims, that they struggled against impossible odds and lost. That was the tragedy. Nodded slowly, but humans are not victims. No. They conquered their world. They built a civilization in hell, and they did it while laughing and drinking cardiac stimulants and eating rotten vegetables. Form pulsed with something that might have been fear or might have been wonder. They are not what we expected. Turned to look out the window at the city lights of Seoul, burning bright against the darkness. They are so much more. The delegation's tour of Earth continued for 2 more weeks. Each day brought new horrors and new wonders. Each night, the alien scientists sent reports back to the Galactic Council that read more like nightmare journals than scientific documents. On the 3rd day, took them to Island. The flight from Seoul was short, but the view from the aircraft window made Crystal Heart nearly stop. Below them stretched an endless expanse of blue water. No land, no barriers, just ocean in every direction. The Pacific, explained casually. It's the largest ocean on Earth, covers about 30% of the planet's surface all by itself. How deep? Asked, her form pressed against the window in horrified fascination. Average depth is about 4 kilometers. The deepest point goes down almost 11 kilometers. 11 kilometers of water, pressing down. Yes. And things live there. Smiled, things live everywhere. That's kind of our planet's specialty. When they landed the delegation stepped out onto a beach. White sand stretched before them. Waves crashed against the shore with rhythmic violence. The smell of salt filled the air. Froze at the water's edge. It moves. It's always moving, said. Tides, wind, currents. The ocean never stops. And humans go into this, voluntarily. We swim in it, sail on it. Some of us dive down into the deep parts to explore. You sink yourselves into the crushing darkness of an alien abyss, for exploration. Also for fun. Made a sound like breaking glass. It was his species' version of a nervous breakdown. The next stop was mountain. The delegation traveled by vehicle through winding roads that curved along cliffsides. Below them, valleys dropped away into misty depths. Above them, peaks of rock and ice stabbed at the sky. Plate tectonics, explained as they climbed. The ground moves, mountains get pushed up, valleys get carved down. It takes millions of years, but the landscape is always changing. The ground beneath your feet is not stable, said. It was not a question. It was a statement of dawning horror. Not really. We have about 10 major plates and several smaller ones. They're always shifting. And when they collide violently. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, sometimes tsunamis if it happens underwater. This has happened many times in human history. Oh, countless times. There was one earthquake in 1556 that killed about 800,000 people. Another in 2004 caused a tsunami that killed over 200,000 across several countries. The delegation fell silent. At the mountain peak, they watched a group of human tourists climbing the rocks. The humans wore colorful clothing and carried packs on their backs. Some used metal tools to grip the stone. Others simply used their hands. What are they doing? Asked. Hiking, some of them are rock climbing. They are scaling a dangerous geological formation for recreation. Humans enjoy challenges, said. We get bored if things are too easy. You intentionally seek difficulty because comfort is unstimulating. Basically, yes. Watched a young woman pull herself up a nearly vertical rock face, her muscles straining, her face set with determination. Your species derives pleasure from struggle. We derive meaning from struggle, corrected. Pleasure is just a bonus. On the 5th day, brought the delegation to his grandmother's house in a small town outside Seoul. Her name was, and she was 87 years old. Was tiny, barely reaching shoulder. Her face was covered in wrinkles and her hair was white as snow. But her eyes were sharp and her hands were steady as she prepared food for her guests. You've lived through a lot, observed, studying the old woman with scientific interest. Your body shows signs of extensive repair and degradation. Translated, laughed. She says of course she has lived through a lot, reported. She survived the war when she was a child. She survived the occupation. She survived famine and disease. She raised 4 children. She buried her husband. She watched her country transform from ruins to one of the most advanced nations on Earth. All of this happened to one person, asked. Her generation experienced more change than any before. They built the modern world with their own hands. Said something else, gesturing at the food she was preparing. She wants to know if you're hungry. She's making kimchi stew. The delegation watched as worked. She chopped vegetables with a sharp blade, moving with practiced speed. She heated oil in a metal pan which sizzled dangerously. She added spices that made the air burn with unfamiliar scents. That red powder, one scientist said, scanning the ingredients. It contains capsaicin. That's a chemical irritant. It triggers pain receptors. Chili flakes, confirmed. Grandmother likes her food spicy. She adds pain chemicals to her food, on purpose. It enhances the flavor. The flavor of pain. Shrugged, you get used to it. Served the stew in large bowls. The delegation members had been provided with nutrition alternatives, and his grandmother ate the human food. The old woman slurped her soup with obvious enjoyment, occasionally wiping sweat from her forehead caused by the heat and spice. Humans consume pain-inducing chemicals for pleasure, said quietly, watching the scene. You climb dangerous rocks for entertainment. You swim in crushing depths of water. You built civilization on moving ground above boiling magma. Set down his bowl. When you say it like that, it sounds crazy. It is crazy. Maybe, but it's also who we are. He looked at his grandmother, who was now laughing at something on her communication device. We don't survive despite the challenges. We survive because of them. Every obstacle makes us stronger. Every disaster teaches us something new. Every generation inherits the lessons of the ones before. Form pulsed thoughtfully. Your species has been tested by your world for hundreds of thousands of years. And we passed every test. Not just passed, you thrived. Nodded. The universe tried to kill us. We refused to die. And now we're here, drinking coffee and eating spicy food and climbing mountains for fun. He stood up and walked to the window. Outside, children were playing in a park, running and laughing under a sky that had been home to storms, meteors, and radiation for billions of years. You thought species were extinct, said, but you were looking at it wrong. You saw our world as a prison, a death sentence. We see it as home. Every earthquake, every hurricane, every predator and pathogen, they made us what we are. Moved to stand beside him, his crystal form catching the light. And what are you exactly? Smiled, showing his teeth. Survivors, adapters, builders, dreamers. He looked at the alien beside him. And now, thanks to you finding us, we're also explorers. There's a whole galaxy out there. New challenges, new obstacles, new things that might try to kill us. And you're excited about this. We evolved on a Category 12 world. Everything out there. He gestured toward the sky, toward the endless expanse of space beyond. It can't be worse than what we've already faced. Considered this for a long moment. Then slowly, a crack appeared in his crystal face. It was impossibly a smile. I believe you might be right about that. 6 months had passed since that day in the lecture hall when raised her hand. 6 months since the galaxy learned that species were not extinct. 6 months since everything changed. Was still at the academy on station, but her life was completely different now. She was no longer the quiet exchange student sitting in the back of the room. She was a celebrity, a curiosity, a source of endless fascination and fear. When she walked through the corridors, other students moved aside. Some pressed themselves against the walls to give her space. Others stopped and stared with open mouths and wide eyes. A few brave ones tried to talk to her, asking questions about Earth in trembling voices. Is it true your world has creatures that grow inside other creatures and burst out of their bodies? A small being with 6 legs asked one day. Parasites said, "Yes, we have many kinds." The being fainted. Another time, a group of students cornered her in the cafeteria with a list of questions. Do humans really chase animals until they die of exhaustion? Persistence hunting. Yes, our ancestors did that. Our bodies are designed for long-distance running. We can keep going long after other animals collapse. And you eat the muscles of dead creatures. Meat, yes, protein is important for brain development. And you form emotional bonds with predators. Dogs are not predators anymore. Well, mostly not. They're companions, friends. You made killing machines into friends. We're very good at making friends, said smiling. The students scattered like leaves in a storm. Professor had retired shortly after the incident. The shock of learning his entire academic specialty was wrong had broken something inside him. But before he left, he sought out and apologized. I taught that your kind was impossible, he said, his voice heavy with shame. I told thousands of students that were extinct. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Had placed a gentle hand on his arm. You weren't wrong based on the data you had. You just didn't know about us yet. That's not a failure. That's an opportunity to learn. Had cried, or at least he had released fluid from his eyes in a way that was similar to crying. You are kind, he said. Despite everything your world put you through, you are kind. We had to be, replied. On Earth, kindness is a survival strategy. Cooperation beats competition in the long run. Our ancestors learned that the hard way. Meanwhile, the Galactic Union was in chaos. The delegation had returned from Earth with thousands of hours of recordings, millions of data points, and a collective psychological trauma that would take years to process. Their reports were published for all to see. The reactions varied wildly. Some species were terrified. They demanded that Earth be quarantined, isolated from the rest of the galaxy. They saw humans as dangerous animals that had somehow learned to build spaceships. Every human smile was a threat. Every human handshake was an attack. The military council, led by Admiral, pushed for stronger measures. Was a large being from a world called, his body covered in armored plates and his mind sharpened by centuries of strategic thinking. They are too dangerous to ignore, argued in the council chamber. A species that survived a Category 12 world will not be contained by rules and treaties. They will expand. They will compete. And eventually, they will dominate. You propose we attack them? Counselor asked. She was from a peaceful world called, her form delicate and flowing like water given shape. We would start a war with a species that has survived extinction events, world wars, and planetary disasters. Better to strike now, while they are few and unprepared. And if we fail, if they survive our attack as they have survived everything else. Had no answer to that. Pressed her advantage. The humans have given us no reason for aggression. They have been cooperative, curious, even friendly. Yes, their nature is frightening. Yes, their world is a nightmare. But they have chosen to reach out in peace. Should we not do the same? The debate continued for weeks. In the end, the peace faction won. The Galactic Union would not attack Earth. Instead, they would try something never before attempted in galactic history. They would integrate a species into civilized society. Arrived at station 3 months after the initial discovery. She was a human cultural, sent by Earth's government to help bridge the gap between species. She was 31 years old, with a warm face and eyes that seemed to sparkle with constant amusement. Her first act was to set up human understanding seminars in the Academy's main auditorium. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of beings signed up, driven by a mixture of fear and curiosity. The first seminar was called Introduction to Human Biology. Thank you all for coming, said, standing at the center of the stage. A holographic display floated behind her. I know humans seem scary. We come from a world that tried very hard to kill us, but I promise we're not as dangerous as we look." A hand went up. "Your teeth are designed for tearing flesh." "Yes, but we rarely use them on people. Mostly we eat cooked food now." "You have bones that are denser than most construction materials." "Evolution, high-gravity world. We needed strong bones to support ourselves." "Your blood contains iron, a highly reactive metal. It carries oxygen through our bodies. We need a lot of oxygen because our metabolisms are very active." "Is it true you can continue functioning after losing significant portions of your body?" Paused, define significant. "Limbs, organs, large amounts of blood." "Ah, yes. Humans can survive losing arms, legs, portions of internal organs, and up to 40% of our blood volume. With medical care, of course." The auditorium went silent. "We're resilient," said with a shrug. "Our bodies fight very hard to stay alive. It's kind of our thing." The second seminar was called Human Social Behaviors. "One of the most confusing things about humans is our tendency to bond with other species," explained. "On Earth, we have companion animals, creatures we live with, care for, and love." She showed images of humans with dogs, cats, birds, and other animals. "These are predators," someone observed. "Some of these creatures have killed humans in the past." "Yes, and yet we keep them in our homes, let them sleep in our beds and cry when they die. We call them family." "This makes no sense." "We pack bond," said. "It's a survival mechanism. Humans are social animals. We need connection to thrive. And our need for connection is so strong that it extends beyond our own species." "What else do you bond with?" Smiled. "Everything, really. We name our cars, talk to our plants, feel sad when robots break down. There's a story about a Mars rover called Opportunity that was designed to last 90 days. It survived for 15 years. When it finally stopped working, people on Earth cried. Thousands of them. They held vigils. They made art. They mourned a machine like it was a friend." The auditorium was completely silent. "You cried for a robot," someone finally said. "It tried so hard," replied, her own eyes growing moist. "It was alone on another world doing its job, sending messages back home, and then it went dark. How could we not cry?" After the seminar, beings lined up to ask questions. They wanted to understand. They wanted to know how creatures from a death world could also be so full of love, loyalty, and compassion. Answered every question patiently. She explained human art, music, stories, and dreams. She explained why humans helped each other even when there was no benefit. She explained why humans would die for strangers, sacrifice themselves for ideals, and fight to protect beings they had never met. "Your world should have made you monsters," one being said. Shook her head. "Our world made us survivors, and somewhere along the way we learned that the best way to survive is together, with each other, with our planet, and now, hopefully, with all of you." Word of the seminar spread throughout the station, then throughout the sector, then throughout the galaxy. Beings who had never seen a human began to learn about them. Fear began to transform into curiosity. Curiosity began to transform into respect. The integration had begun. But some in the galaxy still watched with worried eyes. They saw the humans coming and knew that nothing would ever be the same. They were right.